Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Greetings to all the learners. So today we are here for the second live session for the course on Introduction to Law and Electricity, which is an elementary course to understand the Electricity Act of 2003. In this course, the course instructor has tried to give an overview of the development of the electricity sector through legislative process, how the legislative process has evolved in pre-independence era and post-independence era, and particularly the consolidation of law in the year 2003, when the earlier laws dealing with electricity sector got repealed and a new law was enacted as the Electricity Act 2003, with a great vision of giving necessary growth to this sector, coupling with the idea of protecting the interest of the consumers. In fact, when you read the preamble of the Act, you would find that the Act attempts to address multiple challenges which have affected the sector over a period of time. First and foremost, subject this act has addressed is the very development of electricity industry. And for the overall development, for comprehensive development, the law has made some revolutionary changes in attracting private players in all the three segments of the sector, that is distribution, transmission, and generation. Particularly in generation, the law delicensed the entire activities. The law has done away with the very need of obtaining a license to start a power plant. So per se, no need of obtaining license to involve in generating units, generation of the electricity. Having said so, the requirement of obtaining approval from different agencies which interface with the generation of electricity is still or are still there. For example, taking clearance with regard to land acquisition, taking clearances with regard to anything connected with forest or environment. So such clearances are still required. But then, as the law was prevalent prior to 2003, that anyone who would be interested to join in generating activity would require to take license. That is something which has been done away with. For the growth of the sector, for growth of the industry, it has been also suggested that let there be a healthy competition amongst the players so that the benefit shall reach out to the consumers. Because there is a well-known aspect that if the competition is there in the market, then the ultimate beneficiary would be the consumer. And thus, the law talks about development of the industry, and at the same time, it also talks about the protection of the consumer's interest. In addition to this, the law also promises democratization of the very availability of electricity. It does not make any distinction between urban and rural divide on the matter of supply of electricity. The law categorically says that supply of electricity shall be ensured in all areas, and thus making all categories of consumer equal beneficiaries without any discrimination. Though it is a well-known fact that equal beneficiaries are not equal in terms of making the payment for using the electricity. We know very well that in electricity sector, cross subsidy plays an important role in making the industry sustainable, at the same time ensuring the availability of the electricity to also the one who cannot bear the entire cost of production. That is something also which the law promises. And the design plan for the same is through cross subsidy. Now, obviously, the law in a way suggests for eliminating, for doing away with the cross subsidy over a period of time. And this one is a challenging goal of removing cross subsidy in one go or even in incremental way, because cross subsidy is a legislative mechanism, legislative design, which in a way guarantees the availability to all. Though it no doubt that it burdens a one set of consumer over other set of consumer in financial sense. But then electricity is one such commodity which should be made available to everyone. That's what is sort of a requirement, I would say. And thus it has been planned that it should be done away with. It should be addressed in a incremental way, so that cross subsidy becomes a matter of the, it should not become a kind of burden on one set of consumer, and gradually it should get eliminated. For doing so, the law has provided for regulatory bodies which are required to undertake the task in a very neutral way, considering the requirement of the market, considering the interest of the sector. And thus we find that we have a central regulatory commission and a state regulatory commission, which has been given the task of determining the tariff or to ensure that tariff determination undertakes in a very fair manner. And that's why you find that under the law, tariff determination is to be done either through competitive bidding process or through the determination done by the regulatory commission. There is always a viewpoint that should electricity continue to be a part of the concurrent list, and thus the state government continues to play a defining role in governing the sector. And in connection with this, there is also an argument that because of the subject falling in the concurrent list, this sector is yet to see or yet to enjoy the real benefit of liberalization. Because we are aware of the fact that distribution segment is entirely under the control of the state government, and distribution segment is the backbone of the industry. Though in good number of states, distribution segment has been corporatized, an entity has been established independent of the government, but still those entities are government-owned entities, and therefore efforts which are being made to bring the benefits of the liberalization in this segment is yet to be tested. There are a few questions which are being asked. Questions asked with regard to obtaining approval from the different agencies for establishing generating plant. Now, as I said, that license is not required for starting the thermal power plant or starting the generating units. Having said so, necessary permissions are to be obtained from all agencies which relate to the generation. Prior to this delicensing, the very business of generation was requiring license, which is still the case when the generating units are getting established based on the source of hydro. So when it has been asked, when it has been suggested that license is not required or there is a delicensing, it is only for that understanding. Otherwise, all necessary approvals are required, be it approval from the labor department, be it approval from environmental ministry, all those approvals are required. The other question is that whether cost subsidy surcharge is applicable to only open access customers or it is applicable to all groups of customers. Cost subsidy surcharge is applicable to open access customers because open access consumers are required to pay this surcharge to compensate the distribution licensing. For the loss of their cross subsidy, which otherwise the distribution licensee would be collecting from the ordinary customer, including the one which is getting the electricity through open access. Now, if the customer goes for open access, then distribution licensee loses that customer in its ordinary pool and thus loses the very avenue to collect cross subsidy, and thus this cross subsidy charge, which is defined under section 38 clause 2 subclause D of the Act. If I read the definition, it says, provided also that such surcharge shall not be leviable in case open access is provided to a person who has established a captive generating power plant for carrying the electricity to the destination of his use. So one for captive power plant, it is not there, but otherwise for open access, it is there. Other question which was asked was the applicability of tariff determined under section 62 by the appropriate commission. Multi-year tariff and tariff determined through bidding processes and also their pros and cons. As I said, that tariff determination is suggested through more than one ways. One is through competitive bidding, other is through fixation by the regulatory commission based on certain fair terms. There is a third category also which can be done through negotiation. Now, it says that section 62, where tariff is determined by the appropriate commission here would mean center as well as state, to all the consumers who are not availing open access. And it would include all categories of consumers. In India, we know that there is a wide range of consumers: commercial consumer, residential consumer, agricultural consumer, industrial consumer. So the commission sets off the tariff based on different parameters. Tariff component generally includes power procurement cost, which is generally about the cost of producing electricity, which gets determined by looking at the factors such as the fuel we used for generation, the efficiency of the generators, the capital and the operational cost associated with each generator, and in addition to that, the technical loss which may occur during the transmission and distribution of the electricity. Tariff component also includes transmission charges. It includes distribution charges, and it includes cross subsidy. Generally, the tariff determination in India takes place by employing one or the other formula. For example, aggregate revenue requirement or average cost of supply. So basically, when you look at the tariff determination, the commission looks at a set of factors such as what is that category of consumer, what is that load factor, what are the subsidies which are there, were decided by the government, actual prices which are borne by the consumer can differ according to these factors. So these are the different way of determining the tariff. And thus, tariff determination is a complex exercise, I would say. It involves complexities in determining the, the tariff based on components which are involved. And here, independent autonomous regulator plays a critical role to ensure that the process is transparent, process is fair. Because such process would not only instill confidence in the players of the sector, but will also determine the progress of the sector in terms of revenue generation, in terms of making the players profitable. Multi-year tariff is sort of regulatory mechanism where tariffs are being fixed for multi-year instead of getting it fixed at the beginning of the financial year. One may say that multi-year tariff gives a sort of confidence to the generating units in terms of having certainty the on selling the product. There is a buyer for that product. And in fact, this is one of the important reforms introduced through 2003 Act, where single year tariff has also converted into multi-year tariff under the Act. So this multi-year tariff brings in predictability, it brings in stability, and thus instills confidence in the players. Tariffs are set for a predefined period, which generally is known as a control period. Adjustments are generally been made at the end of each year to account for deviations for projected cost and revenues. That adjustments are generally, let's say for example, the fuel cost has gone up, then that is something which can be done. Through bidding process, it is done wherein the driving factor is competition based on transparency. It is the regulatory commission which oversees, which in a way determines that bidding process. Predictability is one of the benefits of the multi-year tariff. Long-term planning is the benefit. Risk mitigation is the benefit. There are disadvantages with the multi-year tariff. That is, it is complex to implement and to monitor. It is inflexible. And then for the competitive bidding, the advantage is it brings in competition, which may in long term lower down the tariff, which in long term may work in the interest of the consumer, because such determination would be based on the very functioning of the market. Disadvantage with the competitive bidding is that it may in a way see a sort of cartelization, sort of bid rigging, where there's a possibility of the bidders coming together in order to not to pass the benefit to the consumer in competitive process. Competitive bidding may also adversely affect quality. Another question which was asked was how a generating unit can sell electricity on a trading platform, and how is the tariff determined on trading platform? Generating unit can sell electricity on trading platform through a structured process. We have power exchanges known as Indian Energy Exchange as Power Exchange India Limited. These exchanges, they come up with the detailed structuring, and it is a regulatory commission which draws a broader guideline for the operation of these power exchanges, where the determination of tariffs takes place in a different market form. It could be a day-ahead market, it could be a real-time market, it could be a term-ahead market, wherein we find that generally the day is divided into different blocks, and accordingly trading takes place. Where the seller submits the necessary information about the availability of electricity, delivery time, price, and the buyer will place the bids. Now, for example, let's say supply of electricity in educational institution, which is having a residential campus like IITs. Now, it is well known fact that during vacation, the consumption of electricity in the residential campus would be lesser, and thus it would be well known that there will be availability of electricity during that vacation time. Now, such availability of electricity can be traded, because somewhere the demand of consumer is identified well in advance. Tariff on the trading platform gets determined through the competitive process. Each segment has its own bidding and pricing mechanism. The trading platform matches the sale and purchase bids to determine the market clearing price, which is basically the price at which total quantity of electricity offered by sellers matches the total quantity demanded by buyers. In day-ahead market, there is something called uniform pricing mechanism, which means that all successful sellers shall receive the same market clearing price, and all buyers shall pay the same marketing clear price, regardless of their individual bidding. It is a regulatory commission which does a sort of overseeing of the entire process in order to ensure transparency, in order to ensure fairness and the efficiency in the system. Another question was that, can a generating company sign a PPA with a licensee for only 50% of energy generated, and rest 50% can be used for trading? Answer is yes, it's possible. PPA can be signed, which can be called as a kind of split PPA or hybrid PPA. But at the same time, the same needs, it is important that the entire arrangement needs to be in compliance with the guidelines laid down by the regulatory commission. That's something which is very, very important. It was also asked about the details of the electricity duty. Electricity duty in India is a tax levied on the consumption of electricity, which is generally imposed to generate revenue for the state government and to manage subsidies provided to consumers. The application of it is charged based on the units of electricity consumed. It can vary from one category of consumer to another category of consumer. It has its own way of calculation, which is based on unit consumption. And obviously, it shall vary from one state to another state. That's what is the scheme. What is renewable purchase obligation? What is the current guidelines? Renewable purchase obligation is sort of mandate for all utilities to buy a certain percentage of electricity from renewable sources. And if they fail to buy, then there's a process of buying the renewable energy certificate, which in a way is a market driven mechanism created for the fulfillment of the compliance of the law. It is broadly related to the commitment of everyone towards better environment. You may say that this is also a uniquely designed legislative mechanism for promoting renewable, wherein the law compels the players of the market to compulsorily choose renewable, and that compulsion is for the larger goal of contributing to green planet. It is the Ministry of Power in consultation with Ministry of New and Renewable Energy which sets the criteria for RPO. RPO gets divided into sources of renewable, solar or non-solar, or hydropower. There are, over a period of time, it has been witnessed that the